Good morning, everyone. Coming in from London today. This is Nikki and Nikki Carpenter, myself, Andrew Lane. We are both co-founders of Acuity. And today we thought we would have a little bit of a chat together and reflection on the last, just over a little bit over a decade, on our story with Acuity and before that, what led to it, and things like that. So, Nikki, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew.
Where did you start your career? I do know that, but obviously I want everyone else to know that.
How far back do we have to go? Well, I guess my very first, I suppose, called proper job was with a financial news agency in London. So I came up from the sticks of Dorset and the bright lights of London. And it was there that I had a role as a marketing I think it was executive at the time, working for a small financial news agency. And then from that, I was introduced to Dow Jones, where I continued in a marketing capacity. And it was there that you and I met, my role marketing and yours in sales.
That was Norwich Street in 2003, 4?
Yeah, I think it was around then.
Yeah. And,
a long time ago.
Yeah, a very, very long time ago. And did you always want to... Did you think you were going to end up in the city or in...
No, far from it, actually. I think I seem to remember when I was sort of during my studies thinking, no, the city, the financial world wasn't really something I was particularly going to seek out. But I think just, you get an opportunity. I thought it would be a step into London, and then I suppose, as they say, the rest is history. So the sort of journey just sort of led on from there. Took a bit of a career break from the finance world, I suppose, for a few years before we started up Acuity. So.
Yeah, and Acuity, for me, I don't know how you saw this, but the start of Acuity was, I guess I always wanted to start my own company, and I had my own company at university, being a bit of a Dell boy. But it was kind of like something that was sort of forced on me. I lost my job, and I had options of either coming back to London from Spain or starting my own company. But I felt as though I'd been treading water for a long time because I was comfortable. And it was very, very difficult getting out of that. And I feel almost fortunate to have been pushed into what is Acuity and our success. But
yeah.
How do you look at it?
I guess, my departure from the city was voluntary at the time, and I ended up working as a consultant with some startup companies really in a maritime intelligence and information field, where actually there are a lot of similarities to what I was doing in the city beforehand. So it was quite a nice...
It's all information, isn't it?
Yeah, it was information and making the most of that information and making it accessible. And I really enjoyed that time, but I think the experience for me was really about the small business element and really having that exposure across every element of a business and the growing pains and the progression and that excitement in seeing something grow that you've had a really tangible...
Yeah, you had different experience in that sense, because I essentially only had one experience, which was Dow Jones, and you had the prior company, which was a smaller news agency, and then you had 2 or 3 companies after Dow Jones, which were much smaller. You can see you had a broader range of experience of companies.
A taste of a startup, and I guess I learned a lot from, because I was working across a sort of several companies, and I saw, I think, the good and the bad, and I think in some ways I learned more from the bad than from the good in some ways. So, I think I felt I could bring that to Acuity, and I think we've seen the highs and the lows, haven't we? So we've been through them together.
What things are most important that we learned before Acuity that we've used in Acuity, do you think? The skills or knowledge?
For me, I think it was, and I think there was a maybe a gap between you and I on this. I remember you were very bullish in the speed at which we felt we could achieve what we wanted to achieve, whereas my experience had been very much one of, the opportunity's there, but I think it's going to actually take us a lot longer to get there than we think it is. I think there was a lot of steps involved. There's a lot to do, and the challenges that come along.
Yeah, I certainly remember that, thinking things would be a lot quicker. And looking back on it now, what I know now compared to then. I hadn't put enough thought into the compelling reasons of the product, and I think it was the ability to change the product quickly enough that got us going. But I certainly felt at the beginning it was a really hard slog, and you had to learn so much things that you relied on other people for so quickly, whether it's HR, whether it's how to fix your computer and stuff like that. And I guess I'm not a super organised person, as you probably attest to. And organising myself at the beginning was to be ready for that, I probably lacked.
Well, I don't think it was all down to that, but I think in some ways I think we were almost too early for the market. I think we were bringing something very new to a market that hadn't had a taste of this before. And I think perhaps in the financial world, traditional has always sort of won through because people don't like to necessarily change things too much. So I think I
don't think people believed in what we were doing.
I think there was an element of that as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I that's something I do remember. I knew. I don't know whether I was just thinking Acuity or just general. I knew I just need that this would work. I just had this positivity the whole time.
Yeah.
That somehow it will work. Just got to keep on moving forward.
Yeah. It's interesting looking back on the first product and where we are now, and you have to start somewhere. But I think, was it you saying or something, if you don't look back and are embarrassed by your first product, then you've done something wrong, because you don't want to invest so much time in making the product perfect that you lose the growth opportunity. You need to keep going at that stage with something.
Someone told me about the Instagram story about it being an app for hotels or something like that, and how they changed it to what it was, and social media, and it took off. And if anyone asked me, the most strategic thing at the beginning is just getting something out there. It doesn't matter what it is. And it's not the product you go to market with, it's the ability to change quick enough and encompass feedback and listen as well. But listen to people in an intelligent way, because everyone will give you their opinion of what's good and bad. But and especially in a B2B world where you don't have hundreds of millions of clicks, especially in your first product coming through, and you can't see what's good, what's bad, it's how to change that product.
Yeah, we have to draw the line at subjectivity sometimes, don't we, in terms of, it's the same with marketing and branding. You present a new brand to people and, everyone has an opinion on the colour or certain elements, but sometimes it just comes down to subjectivity, which you have to not ignore, but you have to look at the more operational components, I suppose, of what the product is and how you're going to change it, rather than, I know we focus very much on the design and that's one of our core strengths, but sometimes, being dragged down into sort of the subjectivity of people's preferences.
Yeah, and looking back, I look back and think, I would have done this, and this, or I've learned from that. And I try and now spend enough time looking into the future. And the way I do that is by talking to other people who have run this course already, and they're 5-10 years down the line, and see what decisions they're making now and what they would have made before. How do you look at the future?
I guess from a different perspective, because more so our roles, but my focus is very much on, I guess, operational efficiencies and growth that we can capitalise on. So being able to do more with what we have. We know that budgets and finance hasn't always been in abundance. So I know, we have a great sales team, we've got a great sales mindset, but there is an element of time constraints on that. And for me, it's seeing the automations, the marketing side, the CRM, the HubSpots, that opportunity to grow in a way that can transform our business and capitalise on the really good work that the sales team are already doing. So I don't know if that actually answers the question or whether you're thinking more.
Yeah, I think it does. One of the things that I took off from what you were saying there is interesting. I always believe when we started the company, there's this sort of this marketing that comes out of the west coast of the US of startups, that you get raise money, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you are successful, and if you're not successful, it doesn't matter, because on your fourth or fifth attempt to do a startup, you'll be fine, or something like that. I guess at the beginning I knew not everyone has the same story, but there are so many stories out there, and it is so different. And two things I've taken from that is that I really understand now how finance works and how people raise money, and VC and private equity and all those kind of things. And it's made to seem so simple, but it isn't. And it is, it warrants its own podcast itself, like talking about it, because it is so hard. And
I think especially for companies like ourselves, where we've got a UK entity, we've got a Spanish entity, as we've experienced, being a business owner but based in another country, whereas we've got the headquarters here. That throws up some of its challenges as well, doesn't it, when it comes to the finance?
Yeah, and people don't like to lend to SaaS businesses. Banks still look at you and think, where's your manufacturing hub, and where's your big office that you own, and stuff. It's really, it's tricky. But and that's another thing. I think starting in dual locations and having an office here and an office in Spain was tricky. It's had its advantages, it had its disadvantages.
What would you say have been the main advantages
of having two offices, two locations? I think we have a wider, diverse pool of talent. I would say it's a less expensive cost base in Spain than it is in London. In that sense, so it's easier to get going. I guess it allows me to concentrate and focus on things more, and it makes me realise the world of finance isn't just dominated by London. I have equal interactions with clients in Singapore, Australia, London. It doesn't matter.
Looking into the future, if we're touching on the future again, would there be any reason to move the whole operation to Spain? Is that something that...
So I think, there could be. I mean, back in the day, I felt that Spain didn't have the brand that London had. But maybe I'm biased, but I don't feel that matters so much. So like when you're pitching a client in New York or Singapore, and you say you're based in Spain or Barcelona, it always felt less than being able to say you were based in London. But I don't get that anymore. But then I'm based in Spain. How do you feel about that?
I don't know whether it's since COVID or maybe a Brexit thing. I feel the same. I don't think London has quite the same draw. And I don't know whether, as you say, our clients who are, in all corners of the world, whether they really see the relevance of having a London base. And, I don't know whether it gives us the kudos, I suppose, that historically it may have done. I think people are so much more in tune with a global
I think maybe
provider.
COVID has destroyed that element of a base. I know companies are trying, including us, trying to bring people back into the office, but maybe, I've spoken to people who work in a New York hedge fund, yet they're on some Greek island living and working there. So, maybe it's different. So, did you ever, I've never asked you this actually, did you ever get cold feet about cruise?
No, never. Strangely, even on some of the more tougher times. I think going back to my experience with some of the smaller businesses, I've seen, the peaks and the troughs firsthand, and I think there's always an answer. I think one of the things I give ourselves credit for, and I think with the team around us, has been the stability in which we have been able to operate. We've not necessarily always had, as I say, the finance and the budgets behind us when we've wanted them to do things, but I think actually we've given ourselves the best basis upon which to keep working and keep pushing forward, because we've been very, very careful with money. So I think that was a lesson I learned probably from unfortunately the failure of some of the smaller businesses that I'd worked with in the past.
That was after you left though.
Oh, what, Acuity?
No, the other ones you worked with.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't my fault, I promise.
No.
But no, genuinely, I saw, unfortunately, where business decisions were being made that did result in harm. I think firsthand, directly in the business, and so I'm glad that I think our approach has been one of prudence, and we've had the right people around us to support us in that.
I think sometimes also, I would imagine it takes a certain type of confidence to keep a company going and going forward, and that kind of attracts a variety of people that might have confidence, and that can maybe people, and like in your experience, can have overconfidence, or the kind of characteristics that are like, I'm not going to listen to anyone else, and they might have got the ship to set sail, but they're just going to keep going the same course without listening to anyone else. So yeah,
I think I think one of the risks that we've managed to avoid is not getting distracted by different opportunities. I think we have had new opportunities present themselves, but we've assessed them, and I think we've stuck to our guns, and I think we've stayed focused. So I do think that's been a big...
That's interesting as well. That brings me to something else, because that happened recently. We had an opportunity, and I often think that I've been very lucky to launch the business with you, because we are very, very different people, and we I don't know, we can share the highs and lows, which is great, and that's good, but also we have a counterbalance in our personalities, and we can think logically and come. I often feel, for example, I'm quite exuberant and just want to go full gung-ho into something, and you're more like, right, let's classify this, let's think about this, and let's hold back, and then we think about it and go forward. And I think that's something I wanted to talk about, is being a lone ranger, launching your own company, the benefits and the negatives of whether you launch it with lots and lots of people or just on yourself. I mean, obviously the downside of having two people or multiple people, and we've heard lots of stories of this, of people, founders not getting on and falling out. But what are your thoughts on that?
What, on founders falling out?
Yeah.
I think we've done very... I mean, I can't think of anything that we've had a serious falling out over at all. We have disagreements about stuff, but as you say, we come from it from different angles, and I think we do tend to meet in the middle. I think the balance as well. I think I do wonder in some ways as well whether, going back to our comment about having the split offices, in some ways that's been quite useful, because it does, whilst puts distance between us, it also I guess allows us in our roles and our personalities to do what we do in our respective regions, whilst we communicate constantly throughout the days, and we make trips to both offices. But yeah, so I do think that's had its advantages in that sense, but I think going back again to your previous question about did I ever have any cold feet? No, and I think I've reflected on this as well in the past, where I felt, again, from some of the experiences I'd had before, the commercial focus that we've always had at Acuity has again been one of our strong points, because as we've seen with some other companies that we know, perhaps the commercials have always come secondary to the subject or the experience of the founder, and getting their commercial mindset and commercial operations in place has been a real struggle for them. And I felt your experience on the sales side, mine on the marketing, in supporting that, I think, again, has been a great asset for us.
That's an interesting point. I think if I look at my experience at my previous company, Dow Jones, it didn't prepare me in any way, shape or form for launching my own company. And I felt, as we spoke about having to make your own computer and stuff like that, having to learn how to do finance and stuff like that. But it has given us the experience that once we've become an established company, how an established company functions, what we should aspire to. And for all the gripes of a big company, there are a lot of things I didn't realise I did learn. Like, setting pricing schedules and how to do contracts and how to
Commissions with sales teams.
sell, all these kind of things that you learn and you might just look up, but actually are very, very specific to our industry. And yeah, you that now I guess I'm reaping the benefits of that experience over a decade ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now that we're more established.
Yeah, I think looking back and having that initial grounding in a big corporate company is invaluable. And I think for me, then having the experience with the small businesses after that, coupled together, I think sees us through that, startup phase and the pain points. But then you've got the large scale corporate experience to draw on to see, okay, as we get bigger and this is what it could potentially look like, then these are the kinds of operations and processes that would need to happen. So yeah, I agree.
A bit of a random question, and it's not something I flagged earlier to talk about, but a lot of people talk about mental health in the workplace, and a lot of people also talk about founders or running your own company, the stresses of this. Looking back at the last 10 years, are there any comments with regards to running your own company as to how it affects your mental health that might be different to working for a company or working for a bigger company? Or are there any lessons to be learned on how, because it's a deeply personal project, how you separate it from families or integrate it with families or whatever?
I think because financially we've given ourselves the best basis always to work from. I think, there's always been moments where it's been a bit, okay, well, we need to address this or we need to think about that. I think overall, if the financial standpoint is solid, even if it's not, bringing in everything that you want, I've always felt fairly comfortable, because I always felt that that's the thing that would tip us over the edge, and I think that's the thing that would keep me awake at night, and I guess it has done at periods of time. I think the greatest responsibility is when you start recruiting people, because yes, you can worry for yourself from a financial perspective, but then when you have other people that you really have to worry about, and you don't want to let people down, you don't want to affect their livelihoods. I mean, that's obviously a huge stress. But I think, as I said, going back, I think we've done very well there, and just made it a safe, stable business at all times as much as we could.
Yeah, there's always that counterbalance, isn't there, to have of being aggressive in your business to grow faster and being stable. Yeah, it's one that's always on my mind as well.
I mean, I think the only other thing is with regards to mental health, just taking on there are 1,000,001 things to do when you have your own business, and it doesn't matter when you recruit more people, because in some ways you add more because people are generating more work that you might need to be involved in some capacity, or have an opinion on, or proofread something, or check things, or and putting new processes in place, which is one of the big things that we're working on at the moment. So adding more people to the company, whilst it might take some workload off, it creates a different kind of workload, and I think there's a risk that you try and take on too much. We're not at a scale where we can have lots of middle managers and things like that, so just general day-to-day workload can be a bit
I think
challenging.
It depends on your personality, but if it maybe it is something with founders, but a personal project can consume you, whether that's because that's the nature you work, or because you love your project. And with anything, if you focus too much on, then it affects the other parts where you should be lending focus to, whether it's your personal life or sports or whatever it may be. So yeah,
I think when you say perhaps in the past people didn't believe in what we were trying to do, I think there becomes an stubbornness as well to founders. If people want to prove people wrong, we want to make sure that this doesn't fail. So that, I think that adds a layer of maybe stress or something to a founder as well. It's a case of, and that might be family. Obviously, you don't want to let your own family down, you want to prove to them that you're going to make this a success.
Yeah, there is a certain bit of pride in you wanting it. I agree with you. I hadn't thought of it, but you want to, because naturally, you hear these stories that 9 out of 10 startups failed or whatever it is, which I don't think is actually true. I think probably half of them carry on, but just not get the glory and the limelight. But you want to be that success, and you want to prove everyone wrong, because you are a go-getter who's launched their own company, and therefore you want to be that go-getter who succeeds. And you want your family to be proud of you, you want your friends to be proud of you, and there is a certain bit of responsibility, not responsibility, but bears down on you. Yeah, it's the other thing I always say as well, and I don't know if this resonates but with everyone in the company, but it's about enjoying the journey rather than the end point. One of the things I've talked about or seen a lot of people who sold out at the end, including my father, who lastly passed away after selling his company, is that it's not about where you get to, it's about, your journey can take 10, 20 years. So you got to make the best of it, and that includes also people that you're working with, enjoying and working with them, and the stuff you get to do along the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have, I wouldn't say we've made that our focus, but I definitely think it plays into how we approach things.
Yeah, and I think that changes everything, the ethics and everything. As you get, when you're a 3-man band, 5-man band, and the way, if you're a 20-man band or a 30-man band where we are now, everything is different at different stages. I remember someone telling me that he built several companies, but he always had a metric. When he got to 20 people, he would sell the company.
Right.
Not the size of the company or the profitability, just 20 people.
So. I think, I guess office politics can play a big part in that. And I think maybe, it's something to touch on in terms of HR it's quite a demanding part of running a business, isn't it? So I can imagine, getting to 20 people, it does, we're at that level and more, aren't we? So it's, it can consume a lot of time.
So talking about not Acuity, if I asked you this one question, complete this sentence. When I'm not working, you'll find me.
I suppose more often than not, you'll find me walking my dog and probably doing loads of DIY on the cottage that we've been developing. So, yeah.
You once said that to me. If you weren't doing Acuity or after Acuity, you would quite happily
develop
a property,
Yeah, I think I like taking something that, has been left in a state of disrepair to seeing it, restored to some sort of glory. I like the journey, I like the process, and I like seeing that sort of reflection on a property, seeing its change.
I've often reflected on the desire to become a carpenter. And build things, and maybe that's something in common, like you want to be creative.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we've come to Acuity.
Yeah. I think also I don't want to sit at a desk forever. So I think I sit down at a desk too much, so I think it's quite nice. I like being able to,
You know something about that? Interesting. Well, I think you know this already. Yes, you do. I have one meeting a week, every week, on the bicycle. And I find it the most instructive meeting, because I go out with a friend and we discuss our issues at the company and stuff like that, and we resolve a lot of stuff. And there's no reason why you can't have a meeting in that environment.
Yeah, I agree. I think I could do more of that for sure. Yeah.
So, last question. You'll ask me, yeah?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's me. That's where you'd find me if we weren't working. What about you? Where would you be found if you weren't?
I think, because I live in Spain, it's an outdoor life. I'm tending to do exercise, whether it's on the bike, running, swimming, or with the kids playing tennis or paddle or something like that. So I very much like my outdoor lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a nice part of the world. Okay, and so what's next? I guess for Acuity, it's I think we're 11 years old now.
Yeah, 11 years last month. Although, it depends on how you count it, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So I think we've got a good base of staff. In terms of product, I want to expand and offer more data within the research done on the platform that we've got. So offer more value to our customers within what they're already subscribing to. That's a central strategy, is to keep on pumping our products full of new innovative data and ways to access that data and just make it invaluable. Just so different to, in terms of value concept, to any other competitor we have.
I see a lot of the clients as well in terms of how they're delivering that data to their clients as well. So how their traders are consuming that data is becoming, I think, a lot more varied for them as well.
Yeah, and I think we're riding that trend, and we've got lots happening in that, but that still hasn't ridden out. I mean, we were looking at another way as well for institutions. It's another area that I want to get into more, is a discretionary institution, the banks and investment banks. And then finally continue our good work with the data feeds that we provide to the likes of hedge funds and data-led desks at banks and such forth. And, we've seen in the last year the explosion of alternative data sets in the concept of ChatGPT, brands such as that. And I think there's a lot more to be done on that. And we've got lots more already in the pipeline in terms of product. And then I think I was going to say the expansion, the global expansion, but we already serve a big global client base. From Australia to Singapore to Dubai, London, New York, Canada, etc. But maybe reinforcing that geographical presence. So yeah, I think we still got a lot to do.
Yeah, it's busy.
But most of all, I think the most important thing is to enjoy it, as I keep on coming back to it. And if we're not enjoying it, then we don't do it or change it. Right?
Yeah, agreed.
So, see you in another 10 years.
A few more grey hairs by then.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I hope it was instructful. And wherever you're seeing this, please feel free to pop some questions out. I'd love to answer them and hear your thoughts. Thank you.